Hello, I'm Tim Glendinning. Some of you may know me as Dolby in Aces High, and I'm here to give you a short training session involving the Majestic Messerschmitt 109 Emil. We have a lot to discuss, so sit tight, grab a coffee, eat, I don't mind, and I hope this will be insightful for you. The 109E was introduced to match up with the early Spitfires and Hurricanes. The Emil can be a reasonable force within the main arena of Aces High. The main problems with it are the ammunition and its lack of top speed. But other than that, it isn't a bad package. It's got twin cannons, an average and competitive climb rate, and it's probably the lightest 109 in the game. In the right conditions, you may find the Emil to be quite effective. It's also a good plane, being small, light, nimble, and it's very forgiving at low speeds. Firstly, let's talk about the engine performance. The Emil is fairly reasonably powered for an early war aircraft. It can cruise at about 280 miles an hour, and the WEP will probably bring that up another 10 miles per hour. It makes it pretty much in the bottom third of all the planes in the game for top speed. At 15,000 feet, it will cruise at around 340 miles an hour, and the WEP at that altitude tends to add only about 5 to 8 miles an hour, which isn't great. The climb is decent at about 3,000 feet a minute, under 15,000 feet with WEP, and the acceleration is surprisingly quick, and certainly with an acceptable range to the same ceiling, 15k. On the 109E, the WEP is important, and save it for use in combat, or when you especially need to climb rapidly. Even though it typically represents only a small amount of top speed game, it really helps in acceleration and climb. The range of the 109E is pretty disappointing, though it's the weakness of all 109s, and you probably will only get 25 to 30 minutes in the air. Bear in mind, there is no option for a drop tank. Right, let's discuss the firepower of the 109E4. The Emil is very different from other 109s in Aces High with its arrangement, adopting wing-mounted cannons instead of the usual single hub-mounted cannon. Additionally, this early 109 has the inferior 20mm cannons with only 60 rounds per gun. The Emil's cannons have poor ballistics, a slow rate of fire, and bullet drop akin to a 30mm shell. I'm not saying that the Emil's cannons are any less effective if you land hits, but landing those hits is much more difficult at range. Shorter range and longer tracking times are needed to compensate for the problems you'll encounter at range. The cowl-mounted 7.9mm machine guns offer lots of ammunition but little in the way of hitting power. Given enough time though, the machine guns can take off control surfaces, and if you're lucky you may even hit the pilot, causing your enemy much bigger problems. Overall, the firepower package is best used at very short ranges where you can bring the cannons into your opponent easily without long-range aiming. That tends to be the case in most situations and most of the time, as enemies are constantly maneuvering against you anyway, so fly a bit more mindfully and get really nice and close. I would set the cannons to a relatively short convergence, since outside of 300 yards, range aiming is very difficult, especially because of the bullet drop. I typically set mine between 225 yards and 275 yards depending on the opposition I'm expecting. The faster the aircraft I'm expecting, the further out I'll throw my convergence. Right, okay, let's discuss your agility now. The maneuverability is generally pretty good. The E4 actually has a slightly smaller wing area than the other 109s, but it's also quite a lot lighter. The E4 turns pretty well and is one of the 109s that can and will surprise you with its agility. The best manoeuvring speeds for the E4 are a little lower in general than other 109s, and I find from 200 to 250 miles an hour to be its peak. The cannons in the wings really do hurt your roll performance, and the E4 suffers the same compression related problems as later 109s, except it tends to set on a little sooner, around 425 miles per hour. That's where your roll rate will pretty much disappear, and you'll have to use the rudder to help it roll. As the speed increases, your elevators will become increasingly heavy. I find the K key trim tab will help you pull out of any dive given enough space. The lower top speed of the E4 gives you less chance that you will overspeed your E4 out of control and crash into the ground. The E4 is best flown between 5,000 and 10,000 feet. Be mindful of your engine torque also, as the left wing will be the one to stall first should you get into a turn fight. The E4's rudder authority is very good, and it can help you pull off some good shots and maneuvers. Should you get into a bad stall, go neutral on your controls, and then hit full throttle. The E4's own aerodynamic shape and its stability will help it come out nose down and pointing in the right direction. With practice, you'll be able to speed the process of recovery up with minor control inputs. Okay, this is the important part and the bit you've all been waiting for: fighting in the 109E. The E4 is going to be a challenge for you to be successful in, but you do have the basic tools at your disposal. The key will be to find an environment where you can work against smaller groups of enemy planes, so that you don't get overwhelmed or have to go on the defensive too quickly. Climb to a reasonable altitude, but don't exceed 15,000 feet. Be mindful of your limited endurance, even if you've taken 100% fuel. Cruise into your combat area. Select a target that's already reduced its E, or energy. Once you have someone in a turn fight, it is unlikely that it will out-accelerate or out-climb you too quickly to get away. Try and get in close and give yourself as easy a shot as possible at short range. This is generally good practice, but in the E4 it's pretty much critical. Try and only engage in a very tight turn fight when your fuel is below 50%. Don't fire all of your guns at one time, else you'll confuse the identification of which rounds are actually hitting. Short bursts are important. Try to ensure enough lead and drop. Use the cowl guns as ranging weapons or to keep the enemy in the turn. You're unlikely to inflict killing shots with them, but you may damage some control surfaces and make your job a little easier. If you hit the pilot, it will make it very easy. Remember that you can turn better than any other 109 too, so most people will not be expecting you to even consider a turn fight. The E4 has the same 109 icon as the rest of the models, so they have to get close to identify you, and they may keep you at arm's length thinking you're a later model K4. Defensively, I'd try and make sure that you bring friends who can help you egress if you plan to land some of those kills you've earned. You simply don't have the speed to leave a fight at your own choosing, and there are several aircraft out there that can out-turn you and out-E-fight you fairly easy if you get pinned. Your turning ability is surprisingly good though, so don't disregard that as your option. You can turn with a Spitfire, which is pretty impressive, but you won't outclimb it, so keep him turning. Use those 7.9s and he'll turn. Try and always keep a lane open for your exit though. Don't allow yourself to get surrounded quickly, especially if you're low on altitude. You just won't have the power to break out and escape to safety. Always watch your fuel state. Overuse of the war emergency power can leave you with very little range and time in the air. Right, here's a quick summary. The E4 is pretty good, but takes a high level of thought to survive in. It can turn with a Spitfire, but that leaves you vulnerable to the likes of the Zero, the FM2, the Hurricane, and the newly introduced Brewster. Some people in Spitfires will think that you're a late model 109 and fancy their chances with you in a turn fight. Personally, I like to fly gentle turns, just to sucker them into thinking just that. That can be the opportunity you need and exploit it. Then get out of there before they figure you out. Once it goes out in range that you're a 109, they will hunt your early war ride down. Right, okay, that's about it for now. Thank you very much for listening. I've been Dolby. I hope this has been able to help you understand some of the finer points of flying the 109E4 in Aces High. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know and I'll answer them the best I can.